Flirting or harassment? It's a question that can make any social situation pretty tense. One person's friendly compliment can be another person's moment of real discomfort. So, where exactly is the line? Today, we're going to dive into a viral online discussion that offered a surprisingly clear answer. This is the core of it, isn't it? How can the exact same interaction be seen in two completely different ways? What makes one person feel a spark, a connection, can make another person feel uncomfortable or even threatened. Let's get to the bottom of what really makes the difference.
So, our guide for all of this is actually a viral Twitter thread that it really struck a chord with people. It laid out a simple, really practical framework for telling the difference, and we're going to walk through its most important points right now.
Okay, let's get right into it. The line between what's considered flirting and what's considered harassment can seem incredibly thin. But crossing it, well, that has some serious consequences. And look, this isn't just about being polite. It's about making sure everyone feels safe and respected. Period. So where do we even start? Well, we're going to kick things off with the most common way we interact, our words. This first section is all about what we say, and maybe more importantly, how our good intentions can get totally lost in translation if we're not being careful. This slide here really breaks it down beautifully. On the left, you've got welcome interactions. On the right, unwelcome harassment. So a single friendly smile, totally fine, right? But repeated smiles, after you've already seen some resistance, that's when it starts to get uncomfortable. A compliment on someone's work or their style is great, but a comment about their body can feel objectifying. It's all about context, and it's all about how the other person is feeling. So when does a compliment actually cross that line? Well, here are a few really clear signs. If it's about someone's body instead of their actions or choices, if you're repeating it without getting any kind of positive feedback, or if you have any doubt at all that they're comfortable, it's time to stop. At the end of the day, your intention doesn't matter nearly as much as their experience. And this quote from the thread, man, it just says it all. If you're in doubt if the other person is receptive, don't risk it. It's such a simple rule, but it is incredibly powerful. When in doubt, just stop. Of course, it's not just about what we say. Our actions, they can speak even louder. So in this next section, we're going to look at nonverbal cues, things like personal space and staring, and how they can be just as intimidating as any words. We all have a personal bubble, right? That little bit of space around us. Well, invading that space, sitting or standing way too close without a clear invitation or a positive vibe, that's a form of harassment. It's a way of using your physical presence to intimidate, and that is just never okay. Wow, okay, this side-by-side really tells the story, doesn't it? On the left, you see a mutual, comfortable gaze between two people. That's a connection. But on the right, you have that unwanted staring, the elevator eyes. That's objectification. The difference is it's night and day. And listen, this isn't just some random opinion. We're talking about major organizations agreeing on this. As the thread pointed out, UN Women is very clear that looking a person up and down is a form of sexual harassment. That's a really powerful statement. So all of this, the words, the space, the stares, it all really boils down to one crucial thing: consent. This next section, honestly, it's the most important one of all. It's about learning to hear the no even when it's not actually spoken out loud. All right, let's start with the absolute, non-negotiable foundation. This should be undeniable for everyone. When someone says no, the conversation is over. That's it. There is no ambiguity. No means no. But what about when no is silent? Because it often is. A cold demeanor, giving really short, clipped replies, taking forever to respond to a text, or just leaving you on read. These are all ways of saying no without using the word. These are not signals to try harder. They're signals to back off. So this leads to a really common question, right? If someone's uncomfortable, why on earth wouldn't they just say so? Well, the answer is pretty complex, and understanding it is absolutely key to building empathy. I mean, try to think about it from their perspective for a second. People stay silent for a lot of reasons, but it often boils down to fear. Fear of how the other person's going to react, fear of being seen as rude or difficult. A lot of us have been taught our whole lives to be polite, even when we're uncomfortable. So silence is not consent. It's often just a way to stay safe. And this brings us to probably the single most important definition in this full explainer. Consent isn't just the absence of a no. It is the presence of an enthusiastic, freely given yes. If you don't have that clear yes, then the answer is no. It really is that simple. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time understanding the problem. Now let's talk about the solution. Section 4 gives us a concrete action plan, basically a toolkit for how to respond if you ever find yourself on the receiving end of these unwanted advances. Here's a really practical 4-step plan you can use. First, step 1. You can try those nonverbal cues we talked about, the cold shoulder, silence. If that doesn't work, okay, step 2. Be direct, but you can still be friendly about it with a simple, "Hey, I'm not interested." If they're still not getting the message, you have every right to move to step 3 and be blunt and even harsh. And finally, step 4, if all else fails, do not hesitate to block and remove them from your life. And please remember this. You do not have to go through this alone. If these steps aren't working, the next most important move is to tell someone you trust. A friend, a family member, a manager at work, whoever you feel comfortable with. You don't have to carry this burden all by yourself. And one last super important thing to remember. All of these rules, they don't just apply in person. A screen is not a shield. Whether it's in a DM, a comment section, or a video call, the exact same principles of respect and consent always apply. So, where do we go from here? We've walked through the framework for telling the difference between flirting and harassment. Awareness is that first crucial step. Now the real work begins. How are you going to use this knowledge to make your own interactions and the world around you just a little bit safer and more respectful? That's the real question we should all be asking ourselves.